Okay, hi, welcome, Sarah and Ben. We're taking
Hi.
a hi. Say hi, Ben.
Hi.
We're taking a little bit of time this month to talk to some real live engineers, real life engineers. You're alive, I hope. Um, and ask them a few questions just to get their perspective. So, with that, I'll kind of dive right in. Welcome again to Sarah and Ben Rishu, who are both professional engineers. It's just a very quick little backstory how I met Sarah and Ben. We all actually graduated from the same program at Queen's University. We all graduated from chemical engineering and have all gone on to do some really fun stuff. Sarah spent quite a bit of time working in food industry. Ben works in energy, and they can tell you maybe a little bit more about that. But I thought we would get going right into the questions, or maybe if you want to take a few seconds and tell us a little bit about yourselves before we get into the questions. We can start with that. Sound good?
Sounds good. Ben's doing a face, so I'll go first.
Okay.
I'm Sarah, and I graduated from chemical engineering in 2001. And after that, always worked in the food industry. I started out doing industrial engineering, Six Sigma type work, and then gradually got into more like supply and demand planning and logistics planning and operations management, and worked my way up through kind of the management stream. And here I am today. I'm still kind of working with industry a little bit, but more on the management side of things, 15 years into my career. How about you,
Awesome.
Ben?
Thanks, Sarah.
So I also went to the same program, chemical engineering, but I took a totally different career path. I actually work in the nuclear power industry. When I started, I was hired as a junior analyst in the nuclear safety analysis division of what was Ontario's provincial utility, and we spun off into a consulting company. I still do nuclear safety analysis. I do project management and team management, and now we do nuclear safety projects both in Ontario and all around North America and other places in the world, looking at safety issues at nuclear power plants.
Very cool. So, thank you very much. I think it's really neat that the three of us have gone on to do some really unique things. And I think that's a pretty neat representation of what can happen in engineering. But we can talk more about that maybe on another post. So, with that, we'll get into the first question I have for you guys today. I just want to know why did you become an engineer?
I've been thinking a lot about this since you posed the question to me yesterday. It's funny, we have a son who's in grade 9, Spencer. He's 14, and he's taking math this semester. I was helping him with his homework the other day, and I just remember when I'm doing the homework with him, I remember how much I loved math in high school. Like, I know it probably sounds super nerdy, but like I just really had fun with math, and I also really like chemistry and physics, like that side of science. And so I always just thought, well, I'm going to do science. I'm going to do science. I'm going to do math, and I'm going to keep loving it. And I didn't really know what I was going to do with it. And it wasn't until I got into Queens and into my first year of university that I really started to understand what engineering was. I started in just straight science, and I met people in engineering, and I realized, like, hey, these guys aren't just loving math and science, but they're also learning how to apply it and do real world stuff with it. And that sounded so appealing to me. I've always been really fascinated by just like nothing too exciting to other people maybe, but I've always been really fascinated by how the world works in terms of things like wastewater treatment and like even how garbage is picked up and where it goes and like how do construction sites work? How do the materials get to the building site? And just how everyday stuff kind of comes together, all that stuff that most people probably think of as being in the background. I was always just really fascinated by how infrastructure worked and how our world came together. And in engineering, I started to see how I could get more involved in that and how I could take my love for math and science and apply it to that. So that's really what attracted me to engineering. And I knew right off the bat that I was going to do something like Six Sigma, like getting into factories and just really picking apart how they worked and how to make them work better. So that's me.
Yes, I agree. That is a lot of fun. I know maybe not for everybody, but I can relate. How about you, Ben?
Well, I was similar to Sarah in that when I first started at university, I actually didn't think I was going to be in engineering. So when I was in high school, I thought engineering was just what I realize now is kind of civil engineering. So, designing bridges or, designing gears for cars. I'm like, well, I don't kind of want to do that. Like that's boring stuff. That's sorry to all the civil mechanical engineers out there. So I started in science when I went to first year university. But then when I started to meet people that were in engineering at the time, I realized that in the engineering courses, I saw that they were really not just doing kind of one course at a time, but really the whole program that they were doing tied together, and they used aspects of computers and physics and math and chemistry and kind of combining that all together in really practical ways to solve problems. And that was really kind of an attraction to me, because I found in the science courses that I was taking, we would do the one subject, but you wouldn't really put it together with other parts. So it was really like the science theory was good and was interesting, but like it was missing that kind of connection to technology, or it was missing the connection to real world things. So when I realized that was what engineering was more about, and not just, designing gears or calculating spans on bridges, it was really kind of putting together those practical solutions. I realized right away, okay, that's something I've got to do. So halfway through my first year of university, I switched into engineering and was so happy with the switch.
Awesome. Yeah, I see a lot of that even today, and connecting the idea of engineering with bridge building. We seem to still have that sort of preconceived notion. I don't know about you guys, but I've never designed a bridge in my career yet.
I would be so useless at designing bridges. No,
yeah.
never.
But it's neat that you're able to actually see that how those things kind of all fit together. And that sort of leads really nicely into the next question I have for you guys. How does your work impact society?
So, like I said, I worked in the food industry for many, many years, and there's kind of an obvious answer based on my experience, how to answer this question, in that I always made sure that food was made safely and it was wholesome and nutritious for consumers. And so I think that does have a tremendous impact. I don't know how much people even really think about engineers in the food industry and what kind of an impact engineers have, but really it's a critical part of that whole industry, and making sure that our food supply is consistent and there and nutritious and also affordable. So when I think about Six Sigma work that I did in food, it was all about making sure that products were as affordable as possible to people while still being safe and nutritious. And then I guess just more broadly speaking, maybe a less obvious answer, like I said before, I'm really interested in just kind of how things work around like everyday life and infrastructure. And I always thought it was really interesting that Ben worked in energy and I worked in food, and those seem like two really non-controversial sort of directions to go in engineering. And we're not exactly like designing rocket ships or anything and taking people to the moon, but I think we have such an important impact on people's everyday life. And I think broadly speaking, that's really important that people are interested in that, and that we have smart people working on things like food and energy and making sure that society can continue to kind of trudge ahead forward.
Totally. Yeah, there's so much more I'm sure that we could talk about, but I'm curious to hear from Ben, from your take on this as well. Thanks, Sarah.
So from my perspective, like I mentioned, I work in nuclear safety. So honestly, if I've done my job well, and everybody that I work with at the nuclear plant have done their job well, then we never have an impact, because we're talking about accidents. We're talking about analyzing accidents that we hope are never going to happen. So hopefully if we never have to think about the impacts of a nuclear incident or of a plant meltdown, because we want to take steps so that never becomes something that impacts society, and you can live right next door to a nuclear plant and it's a good thing and you never have any kind of impact on it. So part of my job is to make sure that there is no impact on people, and that they can just go about their lives and have a safe, reliable form of energy, and plug in your laptops and turn on your heaters and your air conditioners, and you never have to think about the nuclear safety aspect. So it's kind of a weird way of saying that my impact is to not have an impact. Mm-hmm. But that's an important thing in that every energy source is going to affect people one way or another. If you're burning coal or building a dam or have a nuclear power plant or a solar grid, there's going to be impacts one way or another, and obviously we want to make sure that we understand those and control them and take the best measures to give safe, reliable, and affordable energy for everybody to use in their day-to-day lives.
I think it's really interesting that both of you talked about, I mean, there is the safety aspect that engineers care a lot about, keeping people safe and making sure that the work that engineers do doesn't have a negative impact on society. But I think it's really interesting that both of you also just talked about the idea of how, as engineers, you can also make people healthy and happy. Sarah, you talked about affordability of the food. So there's all these other ways other than just, not blowing people up and not having an impact, that engineers are able to help. So I think it's really neat that you guys are thinking about that as well. And then I guess just moving on to the last idea here. I mean, at Engineers of Tomorrow, we're thinking about how we can talk to the next generation that's coming through in different ways about engineering and shift the messages and perceptions that they have of the profession so that we can have an impact on their lives and have them maybe consider the engineering as an option for them, and attract some really great talent into the profession to solve some pretty big challenging problems we have coming ahead. And with that in mind, and knowing that you already mentioned, Sarah, you guys have some kids that are close to making these kinds of decisions. I wanted to ask, what's one thing that you want kids to know about engineering?
I think the question that both Ben and I get the most is from people in high school who are trying to decide what courses to take in university and even what school to go to once they've already decided to take engineering. And we sort of always answer it the same way and it sort of builds on what Ben said earlier. Engineering isn't any one thing. So you can really like science and really like, say, just chemistry or just math, and go to university and you might think, I'm going to keep taking courses like in high school where it's just one thing, just biology or just chemistry. But actually engineering really brings it all together, and engineering can be everything. And it can bring together the aspects of science and even management that are of particular interest to any one individual. So you can really make it your own. And I think that for me anyway, I always loved the idea of the courses that I took where they really built in some management aspects to engineering. I love the idea of my kids going into a broad engineering program where they do learn kind of the management side of things and sort of how to just really bring it all together, and then be able to flourish as a business person or as a scientist as they kind of get out into their career and into the work world and continue to individualize it for themselves. So I guess just to kind of sum that up, I think the most important message is engineering is not building bridges, designing bridges, and it's not just about chemistry or just about physics, but it's about what you want it to be, and it's a really great platform to build the career that you want in science, that can take you kind of anywhere in your life. And you can send people to the moon, and you can also make cans of soup, or you can make energy, and it can be any or all of those things, whatever you like. So that's the message that I try to share with young people. And I think any school that you go to can sort of personalize the program for you. You can make it work for you, because that's what engineering is.
That's really neat. I never even really thought about it that way, Sarah, that you can really customize it and make it really personal. That's a really neat way of thinking of it. Ben, how about you?
If I thought about it, like Sarah said lots of good stuff. I guess if I tried to distill it down, I think my message would be that engineering is everywhere. It's not just solving math equations, or it's not just doing chemistry. It can be whether you're working in a business or working in the public service or working in a volunteer. There's always a need to do things safer, to do things more efficiently, to do things that can appeal and can apply to more people, to solve more problems. There's always problems. So there's always ways to do things better. And that means that there's a chance to do engineering. So it doesn't have to be designing a bridge or designing a gearbox in a car. It can be finding a way to make a process smoother, finding a way to help more people to solve problems. And that can be in your communities, that can be in your businesses, that can be in the governments. There's always chances to do that. So there's a lot of broad places where you can work. There's a lot of broad places where you can volunteer or you can help. And engineering is in all those places.
That's awesome, Ben. I loved what you said about helping people because I think that that's not always a correlation that people see between engineering and helping people. So I think that's an
Yeah,
awesome perspective.
I think a lot of people maybe think that engineering is just, working at a big car company or working at a desk and, doing drawings and things like that. And that can be a big part of some engineering jobs. But engineering is so much more than that. And that's what I want kids to know is that there's a lot of different ways that you can do engineering and it's everywhere.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for taking a few minutes out of your day today. I just wanted to say I can put up some, if you want to share your where people can find you or connect with you, I can share that in the post. And I wanted to say happy National Engineering Month to both of you. Thanks again.
Oh, thanks, to you too, Becky. Thanks.
All right. I will talk to you guys later.
Okay.
Bye, Beck.
Bye.
Bye.